The natural world is full of extraordinary animals with amazing life histories. Yet certain stories are more intriguing than most. The mystery of a butterfly's life cycle, or the strange biology of the emperor penguin. Some of these creatures were surrounded by myth and misunderstandings for a very long time, and some have only recently revealed their secrets. These are the animals that stand out from the crowd, the curiosities I find particularly fascinating. Salamanders can regenerate entire legs and tails to replace ones they lose. And moose can regrow their enormous antlers every year. How do these animals regenerate entire body parts? And why isn't it possible for humans to do the same? When I was a boy, my father gave me one of these for my 8th birthday. It's a fire salamander. They may look like lizards, but in fact they're not reptiles. They're amphibians with moist skins. For centuries, mythical stories surrounded these creatures. It was believed that they were icy cold animals that could dwell within fires unharmed by the heat. Although their fire-surviving powers may be untrue, the salamander nonetheless possesses a real natural ability that is just as extraordinary. They're able to regrow damaged tails, legs, and other body parts through a process called regeneration. There are more than 600 different species of salamander. They range in size from just a couple of centimeters up to the world's largest amphibian, the Chinese giant salamander, that can grow to over 1.5 meters in length. Salamanders are predators, and many hunt for small invertebrates such as slugs and worms, but sometimes they hunt each other with dramatic consequences. This tiny North American redback salamander is on the menu of the much bigger seal salamander. This may look shocking, but the redback isn't badly injured. A weak point in its skin allows its tail to break off easily. Incredibly, it will regrow a new tail in just a matter of weeks. The ability to replace an entire body part is unusual among adult vertebrates and seems almost magical. Regeneration is a subject that fascinates us. Modern medicine has spent a lot of money and time studying the ways our own bodies can regenerate tissues. All living creatures, including humans, have the ability to repair damaged body parts, but the extent of that repair varies considerably. As small infants, we have the ability to regrow the tips of our fingers if they're severed. But we lose this ability as we age. So animals like salamanders with their super regenerative powers seem intriguing to us. Regeneration has been known about since ancient times, but for a long time no one has understood how it happened. In the 17th and 18th century, there was a new wave of scientific discovery. A brilliant Italian scientist named Lazzaro Spallanzani made meticulous observations into regeneration across many different species and shared his ideas in detailed letters. In November 1765, he wrote to the eminent scientist Charles Bonnet, whom he regularly corresponded with, to announce that he had discovered tail regeneration in salamanders. Throughout the following year, he followed up his initial observations with numerous experiments to try and understand how the salamander could regrow a tail just like the original. He found that all species of salamanders that he tested could regrow their tails when injured, and they did so more rapidly in summer than in winter, and retained this incredible ability throughout their lives. Spallanzani advocated a radical theory. He thought that salamanders already possessed a number of miniature spare parts at the base of each limb that could grow in size to replace a lost or damaged one. He was unable to prove this theory, but he didn't give up. He studied salamander tadpoles and came up with another even more interesting idea. A year after his initial letter, Spallanzani once again wrote to Charles Bonnet, this time with detailed description of further experiments into tail regeneration. Most notably, in this description he wrote, quote, "I am almost led to believe that the tail regenerates in tadpoles are more of an elongation of the old parts than a development from a germ." End quote. This suggests that Spallanzani was on the right track, but the idea that a salamander could regrow a new tail from seemingly nothing was not well supported. However, there's no doubt that his research helped to lead other scientists closer towards proving what really happens when a salamander regrows its tail. In fact, Spallanzani's rough sketches did make sense, and they were the first to describe some of the vital processes in the remarkable growth of new limbs. When a limb is lost, the exposed blood vessels and tissues contract to quickly stop any bleeding. Then, skin from the edges begin to regrow across the damaged area to protect the body from infection. Now cells that were once dormant begin dividing and multiplying to create new ones. Each cell retains a kind of memory of the type of tissue it used to be. So a new cell that regrows from damaged muscle will always become muscle. Within weeks, the salamander has a full-grown leg, almost identical to the original. Although we now know the steps that take place during the regeneration of body parts, we still don't fully understand what triggers this kind of response, but it seems the answer may lie in how the salamander's body responds to injury. In humans, if an arm is severed, the cells die, alerting the immune system to the problem. In response, the area becomes swollen and is covered over with scar tissue, preventing any new growth occurring. But in salamanders, the immune system responds differently, and instead of forming a scar, it triggers regeneration. Another rather unusual looking salamander that lives in the fresh waters of Mexico sheds new light on how this happens. Axolotls are among the best regenerators in the natural world, and scientists wondered if their blood played a role in the process. Like us, they have special white blood cells that consume invading bacteria and damage tissue around injuries and wounds. Researchers removed them, and the results were surprising. The axolotl was unable to regrow new limbs. So, white blood cells were part of the secret of their powers of regeneration. Understanding the role of the salamander's blood cells in regrowing limbs could be a step towards discovering why they can regenerate body parts and we can't. All amphibians have tadpoles, which develop limbs and enable them to move onto land, but salamanders are able to re-trigger that remarkable process. We too undergo extraordinary development in the womb. Maybe, like the salamander, there is a way of us retaining this ability in our adult lives as well. The salamander has a truly remarkable ability to regrow complex body parts to enhance its chances of survival. While we don't yet know all the answers, it's likely that this incredible creature could revolutionize modern medicine and the way we treat injuries. Finally, we leave you with a baby that had a stroke.
When Tommy Palmer was 5 months old, he caught a viral infection that got into his brain. The results were devastating.
When we first got to hospital, he was just lifeless, just sleeping.
Laying in your arms, sleeping.
Laying in your arms. And if
Wasn't
he did,
feeding.
No, if he did wake up, he was just crying all the time.
Tommy had suffered a stroke.
When you hear it, you think,
You just
oh,
don't-
he's had a stroke, that's it. You think he's
The
He's not going to
worst.
be able to walk. He's not going to be able to use one side of his body. His face is going to be dropped. You know, you think the worst.
This is Tommy's MRI scan. Each picture represents a slice through his brain and his face. The white patch on the right of the scan is the stroke damage, a massive part of Tommy's brain where the cells have all been destroyed. If an adult had a stroke that big, it would leave them permanently damaged. Believe it or not, Tommy began to recover within days.
This is like astonishing.
Yeah, they hadn't done anything.
No.
He was just recovering himself.
Yeah,
They
yes.
hadn't actually done anything, only looked at him.
Doctors can do nothing to fix this kind of brain damage, but Tommy's body seemed to be looking after itself.
I just wanted to see, you know, what he does with two hands, whether he passes things from one hand to the other, what he can do with his left.
3 months after the stroke, when he was assessed by a physiotherapist, the only sign of damage was a little weakness on his left-hand side.
It's a good boy.
Oh, brilliant. Good.
But just 3 months after that, Tommy is hardly affected by the stroke at all.
He's 11 months now, and he's just improved.
He go?
From being basically a lump of meat in your hands, not doing nothing, to what he is now. You know, he's just...
A lump of
Well, he was, wasn't he? He wasn't doing anything. Nothing at all. And, like, to see him now is brilliant. If you didn't know he had a stroke, you wouldn't know by looking at him. I don't believe you would. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Conventional wisdom says that Tommy recovered because other, healthy parts of the brain took over the work normally done by the damaged part. But there's a doctor in Boston who thinks that something much more important is going on.
Now the next thing I want you to do is turn them so that like you're going to be catching rain in the air, okay?
Evan Snyder's passion is the brain.
Way up, way up. Okay?
He works as a neurologist in the Children's Hospital in Boston,
I'll tell you what, punch it
and
this
seeing
way.
children recover rapidly from strokes like Tommy did convinced him that something remarkable goes on in children's brains.
Just like spaghetti.
Inspired by what he saw on the wards, Snyder went looking for an explanation. And what he found was a type of brain cell that behaved like nothing he'd ever seen before.
We could start with a single cell and then over time see a dish filled with cells that look just like a whole brain. It was as if we were watching a recreation of the brain right in front of our eyes.